The world is not fair. And the sooner you accept this brutal truth, the sooner you can stop being its victim. Right now, while you're watching this, someone less intelligent than you is commanding more respect. Someone weaker than you is wielding more influence. Someone with fewer skills than you is living the life you want, simply because they understand the dark psychology of human nature. You've been programmed to play by rules that others broke long ago. You've been conditioned to be nice, while others are being strategic. You've been taught to wait for respect, while others are taking it. The game is rigged, but not in the way you think. It's rigged against those who refuse to learn its real rules. It's rigged against those who believe fairness exists. It's rigged against those who think good intentions matter more than psychological dominance. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli decoded the true mechanics of power and influence. He discovered why good men finish last, and why ruthless strategists rule the world. Today I'm going to share 8 dark psychological principles that will transform you from someone who gets overlooked to someone who becomes dangerously confident, untouchable, and impossible to ignore. But I'm warning you, once you see the matrix of human psychology, you can never unsee it. Once you understand these principles, you'll never be able to play the victim again. Let me tell you about the moment everything changed for me. I used to be that guy who had all the right answers, but no one listened. I was intelligent, hardworking, genuine, and completely invisible. I watched as confident idiots got promoted over me. I saw manipulative people build empires while honest people struggled. After that moment, something inside me cracked, and then sharpened. I began to notice a pattern that was impossible to ignore once it revealed itself. The people who rose weren't always smarter, kinder, or more capable. They were simply more fluent in the unspoken language of power. They understood how humans actually respond, not how we wish they would. Influence wasn't granted to the deserving. It was taken by those bold enough to claim it. This realization is uncomfortable because it attacks your identity. It forces a question most people avoid their entire lives. If effort, morality, and talent aren't enough, then what really decides who wins? And more importantly, who taught you to believe otherwise? From childhood, you were rewarded for compliance, patience, and fairness. You were told that being good would be enough. That lie felt safe, it felt noble, but it also kept you small. Machiavelli lived in a world where illusions got people killed. Renaissance Italy wasn't polite, it was ruthless. Power shifted through betrayal, alliances collapsed overnight, and survival depended on reading people faster than they could deceive you. Machiavelli didn't invent darkness. He simply described it without flinching. And that is what makes his insights so dangerous today. They strip away comforting fantasies and replace them with clarity. Here's the part most people resist. Once you understand these dynamics, innocence is no longer an excuse. You can't unlearn how influence works. You can't unknow why certain personalities dominate rooms while others disappear into the background. And that realization carries a warning, because from this point forward, remaining passive is no longer neutral. It's a choice, a costly one. Before anything else changes, you're asked to make a declaration. Not for me, for yourself. A line in the comments that signals a psychological shift from submission to sovereignty. I refuse to be psychologically dominated by others. This is the first fracture in the old programming. The first sign that you're done waiting for fairness in a world that rewards force of presence. Because once this door opens, there's no going back. The question isn't whether power dynamics exist. The question is whether you'll continue pretending they don't, while others quietly use them against you. Are you ready to become dangerously confident? That question isn't motivational, it's diagnostic. Because the moment you move forward, the first illusion that must die is fairness. Fairness is not a moral principle in the real world. It's a psychological trap. A comforting story sold to people who are easier to manage when they're compliant. Every time you wait for fair treatment, someone else is taking what you want. Every time you assume reciprocity, someone more perceptive is exploiting your predictability. And every time you follow imaginary rules, others are quietly rewriting the game in their favor. Think about your own history for a moment. How many times have you given respect first, hoping it would be returned? How many times have you helped someone who vanished the moment you needed them? How many times have you waited patiently while others stepped in front of you without apology? These aren't coincidences, they're patterns, and patterns reveal programming. You weren't unlucky. You were trained to lose in environments where power, not fairness, decides outcomes. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago and refused to sugarcoat it. When he wrote that men should be treated generously or destroyed, he wasn't advocating cruelty. He was exposing how ego and memory work. A small psychological injury creates resentment. A decisive one creates acceptance. Most people live in the dangerous middle. They offer weak pushback to strong personalities. They set soft boundaries with aggressive people. They try to reason with those who only understand leverage. And the result is catastrophic. They look weak, yet still create enemies who now see them as targets. Here's where the emotional tension peaks, because this is the crossroads. If you remain fair with people who aren't, you signal that you're safe to exploit. But if you act decisively, you risk becoming someone you were taught to fear. This is the moment of internal resistance, the moment the old identity fights back. And it's also the moment most people retreat, choosing comfort over clarity. That retreat is why nothing ever changes. Psychological dominance isn't loud. It doesn't argue or explain. When someone disrespects you, dominance doesn't ask for understanding. It changes the conditions. You don't negotiate your worth. You create consequences that make disrespect irrational. Treating you well becomes profitable. Treating you poorly becomes costly. This isn't cruelty, it's structure. And structure is what power respects. Which brings us to the second principle. Ruthlessness is not emotional chaos. It's emotional discipline. Most people get this wrong. They think ruthlessness means losing control, lashing out, or intimidating others. In reality, that behavior is weakness. True ruthlessness is ice cold. It's the ability to feel anger, humiliation, or frustration, and not let those emotions decide your next move. Emotionally reactive people are easy to manipulate because they're predictable. Push the right button, and they explode or collapse on cue. Every emotional outburst hands control to whoever triggered it. Psychologically dominant people understand something most never learn. Emotions are information, not instructions. They register the feeling, then ask a far more dangerous question. What response benefits me most? Imagine someone tries to undermine you publicly. The reactive response is to defend yourself, explain, justify, argue. And in doing so, you validate the attack. You confirm that their move affected you. The disciplined response is chosen, not triggered. Maybe you ignore them completely, demonstrating irrelevance. Maybe you correct them once, calmly, with facts that make them look foolish. Maybe you let silence do the damage. The power isn't in the tactic, it's in the restraint. Machiavelli understood this precision. When a response is necessary, it should be decisive and final. No prolonged drama, no emotional back and forth. One move that ends the conflict in your favor. This is why the most influential people rarely lose their composure. They guard their emotional sovereignty because they know, once others can't move them, they start being treated differently, with caution, with respect. At this point, a realization should be settling in, and it's unsettling by design. If you don't learn emotional discipline, someone else will use your emotions to control you, and they won't feel guilty about it. The question is no longer whether this is right or wrong. The question is whether you want to remain predictable in a world that rewards those who aren't. By now, something fundamental should feel unstable. The old strategy, be liked, be agreeable, be patient, no longer feels safe. And that discomfort is intentional, because the next truth dismantles one of the deepest programs you've been running your entire life. Likability is not power. Psychological dominance is. When people like you, they feel comfortable testing you. They assume forgiveness. They assume access. But when people respect your psychological strength, they hesitate. They calculate. They think twice before crossing you, because they know consequences exist, even if they can't see them yet. Look around your own environment. Who shapes decisions without speaking much? Who do people consult before acting? Is it the nicest person in the room, or the one whose presence subtly shifts behavior? Machiavelli was brutally clear about this dynamic. If you must choose, fear is safer than love. Not terror, not tyranny, but the quiet understanding that disrespect is expensive. Dominance doesn't mean cruelty. It means being someone others cannot casually disregard. This is where people-pleasing dies. Likeable people say yes when they want to say no, because they fear disapproval. Dominant people say no without explanation, because their priorities come first. Likeable people absorb disrespect and hope it stops. Dominant people address it immediately and decisively. Likeable people over-explain their decisions. Dominant people make decisions and allow others to adapt. The shift isn't external, it's internal. You stop asking, "Will they like me?" and start asking, "Will this increase or decrease my leverage?" That question changes everything. It makes you comfortable with others' discomfort when necessary. It moves you from seeking approval to becoming someone whose approval is valuable. Respect becomes something others earn, not something you hand out indiscriminately. And once that shift happens, your behavior changes, naturally, without aggression, without theatrics, without apology. Then comes the next layer, decisive action. This is where most people permanently destroy their influence. Weak individuals make small, repeated moves, empty warnings, half boundaries, emotional complaints. They threaten consequences they never deliver. And psychology takes notes. Everyone learns that their words carry no weight. Their anger becomes background noise. Their presence loses gravity. Psychologically dominant individuals operate on a different frequency. They speak less, but when they act, it's memorable. They don't escalate slowly. They observe patterns, then respond once, with force proportional not to a single incident, but to the accumulated disrespect. Machiavelli's warning here is surgical. When an injury must be done, make it severe enough that retaliation never comes. In modern terms, make your response so clear that no one wants to test you again. Picture a familiar scenario. Someone consistently interrupts you, mocks you, dismisses your ideas. The weak response is to complain privately, get frustrated, ask them repeatedly to stop. That only feeds their dominance. They learn they can affect you without cost. The dominant response is colder and far more effective. You document the pattern, then you act once, publicly, strategically. Maybe you expose their behavior in a way that embarrasses them. Maybe you remove them from access to something they value. Maybe you shift group perception so their behavior becomes unacceptable. The response looks disproportionate if viewed in isolation, but psychologically, it's precise. It ends the pattern. And more importantly, it teaches everyone watching. People learn that your boundaries are real, that your silence is not weakness, it's restraint, that when you move with intent. This is the moment where fear and clarity intersect. Because you realize something irreversible. Influence isn't built by constant effort. It's built by selective force. Fewer warnings, stronger actions, consistent follow-through. When people know you don't bluff, they stop gambling against you. At this stage, there's no returning to the old way. You've seen how dominance actually functions, and pretending otherwise becomes self-deception. The only question left is whether you'll apply this knowledge or watch others apply it to you. At this point, the game shifts from visible dominance to something far more dangerous: control of perception itself. Because here's the truth most people never grasp. Reality doesn't govern human behavior. Perception does. People don't respond to who you truly are. They respond to who they believe you are. And that belief is shaped in seconds, not years. If you don't actively manage it, someone else will, and they won't do it in your favor. Most people assume that being competent is enough, that if they keep their head down and do good work, recognition will follow. That belief is naive. Human psychology doesn't investigate deeply. It judges quickly. Machiavelli understood this with ruthless clarity. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Your reputation becomes your shadow. It enters the room before you do, and it speaks louder than your words. This is why two people can achieve the same outcome and receive completely different levels of respect. One understands perception management and signals value through posture, voice, confidence, and strategic visibility. The other stays silent, assuming merit will speak for itself. It rarely does. Before you say a single word, people have already decided where you belong in the hierarchy, and they treat you accordingly. From here, the power escalates into narrative control, the most sophisticated form of psychological warfare. Every event can be framed multiple ways. The same action can look like leadership or selfishness, strength or arrogance. The person who controls the story controls the meaning. Most people obsess over what they did and ignore how it will be interpreted. That mistake costs them everything. Conflicts are rarely decided by facts. They're decided by whoever tells their version first, most confidently and most convincingly. Machiavelli warned that people judge from appearances, not reality, because they don't have time to investigate. That means if you don't shape the narrative, you become a character in someone else's story, and usually the villain. This is where destiny tightens its grip. When you succeed, you must control how your success is explained. When you fail, you must control what it means. When someone attacks you, you don't just defend, you reframe. A toxic friend paints you as selfish, you define it as self-respect and boundaries. Same action, completely different reality. And whoever frames it first usually wins. Then comes the coldest layer of authority: systems. Emotional dominance is fragile. Systems are permanent. When respect leads to access and disrespect leads to exclusion, automatically, without anger, you remove yourself from negotiation entirely. People can argue with feelings. They can't argue with consequences. This is what Machiavelli meant by relying on what is in your control, not on others. And finally, the highest form of power reveals itself: silent dominance. True influence doesn't announce itself, it's felt. The most dangerous people in any room are rarely the loudest. They're observing while others perform, calculating while others react, positioning while others posture. Like Machiavelli's fox and lion, they shift seamlessly, cunning when needed, forceful when required, without revealing which one they are in the moment. This is where inevitability sets in. If you don't master these psychological laws, someone who has will decide your outcomes for you. This isn't philosophy. It's happening daily. While you hesitate, others are already using these principles against people who still believe fairness protects them. So the choice becomes brutally simple. Either you learn how influence truly works, or you remain someone it works on. Every day you delay is another day someone more ruthless is building the respect, leverage, and authority you want. The world doesn't need more naive, nice people who finish last. It needs individuals who understand psychological reality and act accordingly. If something in you has awakened, if you're tired of being overlooked, sidelined, or quietly dominated, then prove it. Like this video. Share it with someone who's still trapped in the illusion that niceness is strength. Subscribe, because this isn't the end, it's the beginning. And remember what you declared. You refuse to be psychologically dominated by others. Because while you're deciding whether to become psychologically formidable, dangerous people are already deciding what to do with you.